Okay, I think we're good here. I'm John Carrots. I'm here on OSH Radio, and I'm with my guest tonight, uh, Shawn Cartwright, and I will let him introduce himself and talk about uh, what he does.
All right. Yeah, appreciate that, John. Appreciate you having me on. I mean, it's a great pleasure to be here and talking to you and your audience. So my name is Shawn Cartwright. My students call me Shifu Shawn, and I'm the executive director and co-founder of TCCII. And what I do is I teach traditional Chinese internal martial arts for those who are interested in them. So, and I know you have a pretty strong martial arts background, including a lot of Chinese martial arts. So it's exciting to be here. So I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I was thinking earlier we were talking about schools, and I originally about kids in schools, and this week with my girlfriend's oldest daughter who has kids. And the reason I started martial arts was because of being bullied, and it's interesting how you sometimes you start martial arts. Some people started for sports, some people started for other reasons. I started because I was being bullied, and I've done it since I was 6. But that's me. But today we're here to find out about you. What is your background? What got you started? And what have you been doing, and how long you been doing it?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I really appreciate that because, bullying was certainly one of the things, but it wasn't the primary thing for me. And just to answer your last question first is, I say I've been doing this for almost 40 years, since 1985. So depending on when they're watching this, they can do the math. But the thing is and math is hard to do after a bunch of martial artists have been hit in the head, right? But anyway, so the thing is, that's when I started my formal training. And I really was interested in it. We had this thing, and you probably remember this on TV way back before the Zoom lands and the Tiki Taks and whatever, is called Kung Fu Theater. And it'd be on Saturday afternoon. It'd have all these old, like sometimes black and white, but like Shaw Brothers and Golden Harvest type films and some other stuff. And, all these dudes flying over trees and shooting lightning and kicking people in the face. And I just thought that was wonderful. But, we just didn't have anything. I always wanted to train it. But I finally started training in '85 formally. But, speaking of the bullying, I remember in grade school, like getting in fight. I mean, it would never happen or rarely happen today, depending on the school system and, how much they clamp down. But it was normal for like just fights to happen every week at recess and all sorts of stuff. And so I remember a friend of the family was a Marine. He was a Vietnam vet. And like, so he started teaching me stuff because I was having trouble. I'm 6'1" now, but like at that time, like a lot of the other kids were a lot bigger than me. And he started teaching me stuff, strikes and grabs and escapes and some locks and things like that, kind of informally. And it put a stop to the bullying. Looking back on it now, I realize what he was teaching me was like old school combatives, which I don't, probably a lot of people with your experience and things like that would know, but a lot of new people don't know that the old school military combatives, from Applegate, they came from fights, Sykes and Fairborn, and those guys got that from their training in like Hong Kong and experience in Singapore. It came from Southern Chinese martial arts. So it's like grabbing people by the throat and, elbows and headbutts and really nasty stuff. And I didn't really appreciate it at the time, but it was only after I got into the Chinese martial arts, I looked back and appreciated that. So I still say I started in '85 because that wasn't like formal training. That was just like, hey, kid, don't get your ass beat. I don't know how you are about profanity. I tend to use a lot. Like
That's fine. It doesn't matter. I like
But
what you said, though. You made me think about the military. And in my day, everybody that at a karate studio was ex-military, really. My instructor, Luke Casamassa, was ex-military, ex-police. And a lot of times that was the people that learned it while they were in the military and then brought it back.
Right.
So that's kind of how it was. And interesting, where I live now, Ishinru is big because a lot of people had learned Ishinru over in Okinawa when they were stationed and moved back here to South Central Pennsylvania. And because of that, the grandson of the founder, not grandson, I'm sorry, he was the son-in-law. I pronounce his name Augie Wezu, but I don't think that's exactly the right way. But I trained with him a couple of times here. He'd come into town here and teach, and that was an interesting opportunity. Plus, it was because of the military men that were here, and that's a lot of that's how it started. And the military worked on their self defense and stuff and had to. So
Yeah, no,
the old days, a lot of people came from that, but I think it is less today than it was.
Yeah, we owe them a great debt. They brought this stuff back, and it started, even with the Marines being stationed in Asia and things like that back in the late 1800s and all of that. And so there's a great debt. Like the fact that we have martial arts here isn't just from like the immigrant communities, because our members of the armed forces, they were overseas and they learned this stuff and they needed it. I mean, the combatives, it was used to fight Nazis with their bare hands if they had to. Of course, that's the last thing a military guy wants to do is fight with their bare hands, but that's the last thing any serious martial artist should want to do too. So you're 100% correct on that. We owe those men a great deal for the sacrifice that they made and opened the door for us to train these great arts. And I do think one of the things is that tradition is kind of dying. It's dying in Asia and it's dying here. There's just fewer and fewer people willing to do the hard training. And I mean, we were talking before about how like now if a class is more than 20, 30 minutes, that's tough. And the standard's kind of the 50-minute class for all sorts of reasons. But we were talking, when we started training, it was 2-3 hours or more. And I used to teach for the whole day, at times, just with a break for lunch or something like that. So it's a very different approach today. So a lot of and I assume you have a lot of experienced martial arts that listen to your show. So I mean that you guys have been doing it for decades. It's quite something to be proud of.
So how did you get into the internal Chinese? How did we go from the combative towards that? What was your route? Did you end up doing any Taekwondo? Because I know at that time Taekwondo was growing in business.
The thing is, that's a real good question. And, the only thing I'll say is, like you said, how'd you go from like the combative to the internal? And I would say, actually, I went from the combative to the more combative when I went to the internal. It was designed not to destroy your body. And so part of the thing about the external martial arts, and it's not to hate on them, they're really good and they're very quick at training you, much quicker, I think, sometimes than the internal. But they do it sometimes at the expense of your joints and your body and your things like that. Like I remember so many people in the hard styles that had major hip problems or knee problems or things like that, right? And I'm talking just beyond sparring. Sparring accumulates its own injuries, but I'm talking just from the way the techniques were executed and what have you. But the first real school that I trained at, looking back on it, was the owner of that school was a Taekwondo guy. And so a lot of the program was Taekwondo. But I was thinking, I'm like, they're really, like, Taekwondo has a lot of forms, but we didn't really do a lot of forms. It was, I remember I trained 6 days a week, at least 2 hours a day. And forms were only done 2 days out of the week. Kind of as like, we have to do this. And a lot of the instructors there came from different arts. And I remember one of the guys, and I was really thinking, try to remember his name because it was your question that made me think about this. I don't remember his name, but he was an engineer, and I was like 15, right, or something like that, and he was like 45. I thought he was like the oldest dude in the world, right? Which is kind of funny now. But overweight, not very athletic, but he had trained kung fu for a long time before he came to this school. And part of that's because the taekwondo people at the time were the only ones who really had a business model figured out. Everybody else is just like, yeah, I'm teaching this or that, and then they go rent a space and they don't know how the business works, and then they go bankrupt and whatever. So he came from a school like that. And I remember he showed me some stuff that was just like, really wild. And you would think, like, I was young, I was strong, I was fast. And like, I'd try to hit this guy and I couldn't hit him. And he just laughed. And I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, well, I learned this thing called Tai Chi. I'm like, what the hell is that? I couldn't even say it back then. Right. And he's like, well, you move out of the way. Right. And I kept at it. He's like, I don't really know it. I just learned from this guy who taught me a couple of things. And what I realized, he taught me the basic of like a yield and counter type concept from Tai Chi. And, it worked really well. But ever since that, I was like hooked on this idea. And the fact that Tai Chi back then was translated as Grand Ultimate Fist, I'm like, I got to learn that because I want to know the best stuff. But that's kind of how I got interested in the internal arts. So that's how I moved from kind of a combination of Northern Shaolin, Taekwondo, whatever, dogs and cat sort of stuff that was being taught, to a more systematic approach, Taiji, Xingyi, Bagua, and also really got into the Southern arts, the Southern Shaolin, five animal systems, the Wing Chun and the Fuji and White Crane as well. And as I got older, I became more interested in the health side, because at some point you realize that there's always something new to learn, but there are only so many ways to like hit, poke, grab, tear someone, that there's got to be more to the art. In the internal art, in the internal side of it, added another dimension with the chi cultivation, the meditation, and quite frankly, the health aspects. Because what I tell my students now is there is a chance that you're going to have to engage in a physical confrontation to defend yourself. Okay. But that chance is less than 100. But something I can guarantee you is there's 100% chance you're going to have a health crisis. And so the internal arts like Qigong or doing Tai Chi in a meditative way, those will help you with the health side. So I think the ultimate in self-defense, from my point of view, is that you're able to take care of yourself physically, but you're also able to take care of yourself from a health standpoint. So you have a complete toolbox for self-defense and for quality of life.
You talked about, hard and soft, and I think when we had met before, I had mentioned about, in the old days, I had a book I remember when they talked about soft and hard, and how a lot of the old masters started in hard and went to soft. And sometimes I laugh at that, because there are things you do when you're a young man that really, when you get older, you just don't have the energy to do. And I think I equated it to you to drumming in a way. I think I told that story. I knew an old drummer that died in his early 80s, and day before he died, he drummed a gig, and you could hardly see him moving, but everything was hit. Where my band has had a young drummer, and he's like smashing and carrying on, and I thought that to me was the difference between a master and maybe, let's say, not a beginner, but someone in the middle.
Yeah.
And you learn that a lot of that stuff you did when you were younger in the external, you might not have needed. May have made you feel manly and you're there, but did you need that, and wasn't efficient, and was it efficiency of motion and of energy? And I think that makes a difference also. And I think it is a natural progression. I think from the hard to the soft, the more internal. And even like you said about katas, I have to admit, I love katas. I love hitting the bag. I think though, if you want somebody to learn how to hit people, working out in the bag is good. But yet, I love doing my katas every day. It loosens me up. I do a bunch of stuff, and to me, talking about medication, internal, and chi, even the katas that were supposed to be hard, I do them more fluid. And I go through them, and it balances me. And I think that's important, and it is important to balance yourself, and it helps the flow of your energy in your body and your health. Uh, I think sometimes you talk about the Shaolin Temple, and they talk about the yin and yang, and a lot of times over here in the United States, we're more into the yang and the harder and the male part, and forget to balance it out. And I do think that's true. Well, with a lot of things, it's about the balance, and that sounds to me that's what you've learned. It's about the balance.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good observation. And because when you're young and you have so much young energy, you can afford to be you doing an excessive of physical stuff. And you know what? That's fun. The jump, spin kicks and all the hard workouts and just because all I wanted to do when I was young is just fight. I just wanted to spar. I didn't, it's not I liked getting hit, but I didn't care as long as I was sparring, doing all that sort of stuff. But as you get older, those injuries, that recklessness, oh, this is not a big deal. It all catches up to you. And that's the thing. And your point about like you're doing a kata, even a kata that you learned when you were, say, young and was a so-called hard style kata, but you do it slow, you do it mindful with the breathing and the meditative state, it becomes an internal practice. And in fact, and I don't know if you're, if any of your listeners are interested in this, I give away something out of one of my high-end programs. It's a half-hour training, what I call the 3 secrets that will transform any posture or move into basically something that will boost your energy. So it doesn't matter whether you come from Chinese internal, Chinese external, karate, taekwondo, or even MMA, or hell, even yoga people or runners can use this information. So my website is TCCII.com. If you go there right on the homepage, first thing you see, you can opt in to get that. If you just want it, you don't want to be on my email list, that's fine. You can unsubscribe, no hard feelings.
Actually, I'll admit I enjoy your emails. That's how I got to communicate with you. I had seen your stuff and gotten your emails and enjoyed them very much. And actually, this is what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to find out you could tell the people what you do offer and what kind of different programs you do offer on there. So if you want to go more into that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I'm glad you enjoy the emails. I have fun writing them, as you can probably tell, because, I'm telling stories. And right now, my son's in high school. He's about to graduate. So I'm spending a lot of time really training him. And he's 6'5". So I have to really work because he's taller and stronger than me now. So,
well, you're still younger than me. So you're a young man to me. How's that? Does that help you any?
All right. Yeah. So, I'm a very traditionally trained Shifu. And for the longest time, I thought there's no way martial arts can be properly taught online. Yeah, you can go on the TubeBoobs or whatever and see tons of forms, and those are all great, but I really don't see the real depth. Like, I've never seen anyone completely record an entire system on video. And I've looked, especially the Chinese internal systems, which that's my focus. But something happened back in 2019, 2020 would shut everything down, would shut all of our training, all of our classes, everything down. And I'm sitting in my living room with my son. We can't go anywhere because our state was totally locked down. I'm in Maryland, right outside of DC. And I'm like, what are we going to do? And I just said, I flipped it around. It's so easy. And this is kind of a bigger life lesson. So even people who aren't interested in Chinese internal arts should pay attention to this very closely. It's easy to say why something won't work and why you can't do something. But whenever you do that, flip it around and say, well, why could it work? Why could I do something? And so that's what I did, because I had this mental model that you just can't teach these arts online. I flipped it around and I'm like, okay, well, what can you teach about these arts online? What are the benefits of training online? What are the benefits of having a recording? And I'll tell you, there's so many classes where I've walked away and I thought I had it walking away. And I'm sure, you've had this experience. Almost everybody I know has had, you think you have what you were taught. And then 3 hours later, you're like, what was that? I can't quite remember. How was this move done? What was that point he was trying to make? When you're trying to remember something from your teacher, and then 3 days later, half of it's gone, and it's been proven that way. So one big benefit is you can go back and watch the class. And I said, so if I wanted an online video and knowing what's available online, I said, how would I do it? I said, well, I would film that class just like a private lesson. And one of the big problems, especially in the Chinese martial arts, is that, well, first of all, there are a lot of teachers who don't know the complete art. So let's set that aside. But say the teacher does, a lot of them won't teach you the complete art. So I said, well, how do we solve that problem? I said, well, I'll teach my son, because we're both sitting there in the living room, right? So I decided that what I would do is teach on camera my son, and I'm not going to hold anything back from my son. So I said, this way I will document the art and progress through it. And I said, so yes, it is not the same as having someone there with your actual hands on, but it is close. And there are benefits that you can't get from the live class, because most teachers I've trained with will not let you film a live class. So if you don't get it, tough. You can come back for another private lesson, or you just don't get it if they don't feel like teaching it again. So that's going through. I'm systematically documenting all of the major arts: Tai Chi, Xingyi, Bagua, Southern Shaolin. And so we have those programs available for people. We also have Qigong and meditation as well. So that's what we're doing. So you'll see me teaching my son all the applications, sparring, hand training by the point striking, all the forms and how they're done, how they're used, the body mechanics, the Shin Fa, the Chinese internal work. So all of that.
Now, I do know you also have a couple free videos that could maybe wet people's whistle and get them interested, that are on YouTube, I believe.
Yeah, so that's one of the things. And so part of this is like, to film this, like we've done a professional studio. And so we have a lot of expense for a lot of this, but we want it accessible to everyone. We want somebody to be able to get something out of it. So on our website, we have a blog that's free. So we have articles up there. We also have videos. We have a YouTube channel, YouTube/TCCII, I believe, or you can go to our website, TCCII.com, and then get to our channel from there. On our email list, if you opt in, you'll get the 3 Secrets video. And if you opt in for a specific art, you'll get free video training on that specific art, as well as being added. So whenever I send out an email, usually there's some story that teaches something, and sometimes it's a completely free video or offer. Sometimes it's an offer for our paid classes or membership. Some of them are expensive. Some of them are inexpensive. So our goal is to make this available to anybody, just depending on what their economic situation is, so that there's something that everyone can take away from these arts, because I think they're a treasure and they're in danger of being lost. Not lost in the sense of, yeah, you can go on video and find somebody doing a form, but lost in the sense of people teaching the real essence of the art.
Well, I think something I notice a lot with Tai Chi, so because Tai Chi, when I went to the Southern Shaolin Temple, I studied, brushed up on my Tai Chi. And even there, you notice that the different instructors do their Tai Chi different. And I've noticed that different people, based on their background, alter Tai Chi to fit them. And I mean, I think that's good in some ways, but not, everything.
Well, that's the thing. It's like you're a really experienced martial artist, so you notice that. A lot of people don't know enough to understand what's going on. And the thing is, ultimately, you should make Tai Chi your own. I mean, that's why the original was the Qin family. And I mean, I'm not going to get into the mythology of the thing, but everybody goes back to Qin, to Yang, and then you have a bunch of different, Wu and Hao and different family styles, but they all go back. And so it's all because someone learned it and someone made it their own, which is fine. But the thing is, what most people miss, kind of following the Bruce Lee, absorb what's useful, discard what's not. Well, first, you have to really understand what it is. So, there's an old, maybe it was Picasso, I think, said, you need to learn the rules of how to do something to a professional level, so that you can then break them like an artist. So a lot of people, they want to skip that hard work part, which is the meaning of Kung Fu. Kung Fu doesn't mean martial arts. That's technically Wushu. Kung Fu means skill obtained through time and effort, hard work. So you have to spend the time, you have to learn it. Once you master it, then you can do whatever you want with it. So that's another thing I noticed. Like I saw a woman doing a Chin Tai Chi form, for example, and I'm like, there's something wrong. I mean, her posture was beautiful, her movement was great, but I'm like, there's something wrong. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, she's using Yang Tai Chi silk reeling. Like she's using Yang Tai Chi body mechanics in her Chin Tai Chi form. It's not right. Now, that might be her personal style, but when I saw her do Yang Tai Chi, I'm like, oh, it's really good Yang Tai Chi. So I see that, and I see it worse, especially if someone comes from a different art and they blend them together before they've mastered it. So, my goal is to teach these arts as I learn them from my teachers. And then the student, once they have it, they can do what they want with it. But if you're going to teach it, I think you owe something to teaching it correctly, according to the way you were taught. And then, if you want to teach your own thing, fine, teach your own thing, but tell people it's your own thing.
Some of the people I don't think even realize it. I see swimmers that do Tai Chi and they look like they're swimming just because of how their arm motions kind of want to go. Yeah. And I see some people that originally came from very hard karate that are making their Tai Chi harder motions because that motion is so ingrained in them that it's hard for them to break out of it. I think actually, I don't know if you got a warning. I got a warning. We're running out of time with this recording, though. So I don't want us to cop off in the middle of a conversation. But I'd gladly have you back again.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. It's been great talking with you.
Have you tell people more stuff. I mean, what upcoming things you might be having. And I know you do change your programs occasionally. I know you reach out and you even ask questions in your email about what people might want and what's different and what's holding you back from signing up, which I think is nice. I love the approach of your emails and your method. It's a very personable one. It's just not like you don't get on there and tell me that you're going to make me an immortal, indestructible, indomitable fighter, And,
and I appreciate that, John, because that's what so many people do. They talk stuff because, like, that's kind of a sales and marketing thing. And I understand it, but the reality is that Kung Fu martial arts, I don't care where you're from. And, everybody thinks their own style is the best and whatever they do is the best and everybody else's sucks. That's just the way martial artists are. I mean, that's why we like to fight, right?
Well, I think I think it's the person that makes it best. And a lot of times people I know, I don't know if I mentioned you before, I met with the week before I met with you, I was down in Alabama, met with Lamar Davis II, who does Jeet Kune Do. And he says about Jeet Kune Do being good, but actually he's the kind of guy, I think it doesn't matter what he was doing, he would be good because he has that focus, that concentration. And a lot of times it's the person, I mean, I hate to say this to me, but a lot of times it's the person that makes the art great.
Yeah.
Not saying that the art isn't good.
I mean, at the end of the day, the art's not going to save your ass if you're attracted. It's going to be you. It's all you. And so that's right. And so that's why I had some hard ass teachers. So I try to take the best that they had and get rid of like the crap that they delivered. And so that's my goal. It's like, yeah, I'm a old school hard trained Shifu, and I don't tolerate a lot of crap from people. But at the same time, I do want their input. I want to understand where they're coming from, because the training can and should be adapted to where someone is. A 1 year, beginner needs to be trained differently than the guy that wants to go special forces or something like that. It's two completely different frames. So I appreciate what you're saying about that. And, if people want to reach out to me, they can go to my website, TCCII.
I will post it, like they say, down below in case people get
down below. Down below, all around.
But again, thank you for being here, and hopefully we can do this again and follow up on what things are going, and maybe get a little more in depth into your different programs.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it, John.
Right now, thanks for being here, and people can see it down below.
All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate all of you, and best wishes. I'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.